Hello and welcome again, everyone. I'm Sarah Swysicki, and I'm thrilled to have you with us today for our webinar, Boost Student Success, Differentiation in AP Classes. Now, let's meet our presenters. Today, we will have Laura Pearson. Laura is a world language sales consultant and a former AP French teacher. She earned her BA in French and interdisciplinary studies from Virginia Tech and an MA in education. Laura taught secondary French for over a decade, including AP courses, and also studied and worked in France. Today, she supports language educators across the country with the same passion she brought to her classroom. So we're excited to have Laura with us today. We also have Britt Marie Solis. She is also a world language sales consultant and former AP Spanish teacher. Originally from Panama, Britt Marie earned her bachelor's degree in Spanish literature and a master's in foreign language teaching. With 15 years of classroom experience, much of it in AP Spanish, she now helps teachers bring rich, authentic content into their classrooms and reach every learner. We are so excited to have you with us as well, Britt Marie. So welcome both of our presenters, and we look forward to your presentation today.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for the lovely introduction. We appreciate it.
Yes,
I do want to start off. Oh, I apologize, Marie. I do want to start off just by welcoming everybody. And we're excited to be here this evening to talk about differentiation with you. And Britt Marie will talk about what we're going to be seeing today.
Yes, thank you, Laura and Sarah. So as Laura shared, our plan for today is starting with intros. We will also talk about a little bit of the goals for our time together today. We're going to address the importance of differentiation, talk about some common challenges in the AP classroom when it comes to differentiation, some strategies for differentiating instruction in the AP classroom specifically. We will then address some conclusions and takeaways. And finally, we will have time, as Sarah mentioned, for some questions and answers.
Now, while Sarah has already given us a lovely introduction, we do want to touch on a little bit about our history and our experience working with AP classroom and AP students. So on my end, the students that I taught, it was quite a wide variety in terms of my class makeup. I had heritage speakers from French-speaking countries, including France, several African countries. I also had English language learners from different Spanish-speaking backgrounds. So quite a variety with language experience there. But predominantly, a lot of my AP students were students who learned French through the school system. I had a combination of students who took AP for the GPA boost, but did not take the AP exam. It was not a requirement in our district. But then I also had those high flyers, students who were really serious about the AP course and planned on taking the AP exam. So a large variety in terms of need, background. And so a lot of our experience is going to be coming really to light today in this webinar.
Thank you, Laura. On the same vein, I was also an AP Spanish language and culture teacher for 15 years, as Sarah mentioned. And the makeup of my class was a little different from Laura's. About a quarter of the students that I taught were heritage speakers, taking into consideration that there were no heritage learner courses in the district where I taught. So some of these heritage learners were jumping right into an AP course, having never had any instruction in the language, while also other heritage learners within that group had taken maybe Spanish 3 or Spanish 4 before they came into the AP class. The other 3/4 of my students were English speakers who had taken Spanish at the high school or middle school level. And within that group, a handful of students would have skipped a year of Spanish in order to get to the AP Spanish course before they graduated from high school so that it would be reflected in their transcript. One thing to keep in mind is that all of the students who were enrolled in an AP course at my particular school were mandated to take the AP exam at the end of the school year in order to receive a weighted grade in the course. So no matter who you were or your background, there were high stakes for taking the AP course. One other thing to note is that I was also an AP grader for a couple of years, so that also really helped to change some of the things that I did in the classroom, and some of them we will address today.
So today's focus is going to be on the importance of differentiation in AP courses. We'll discuss how to tailor teaching strategies to meet the needs of diverse learners and explore available resources that support differentiated instruction in AP classrooms. So 3 key questions that we're going to answer, which include: why is differentiation important to AP students? What challenges do teachers face in differentiation? And then what practical strategies can be used to support diverse learners? And hopefully you'll walk away with something that you can implement tomorrow. Now, before we get started, we do want to throw it to you, ask what your challenges are in your daily classrooms, balancing exam prep along with differentiated learning. Feel free to write directly in the chat, and we'll see what the group has to say.
Alrighty. Anybody want to share some of the challenges that they face in the classroom when they're trying to balance preparing students for the AP exam, but also differentiation of their learning?
So Kathleen says only about 10% of my students are actually taking the exam. Yeah, I have an NYC of biliteracy preparation going on simultaneously. It's a lot to juggle.
Yeah.
And the students do not have the level to be in an AP class and last basic skills like using the past tenses. Sure,
Thank you,
definitely
Maria.
dealt with that. Yeah, thank you. Other people may be typing. We'll take maybe 1 or 2 more.
Not many are taking the exam, and it is not fun to teach to the test. Thank you, Tiffany.
Yes, time
Time
to
to
plan.
plan. Yes.
Absolutely.
Oh, wow. Every other day.
Always a challenge. Block scheduling is very hard. Different
Yeah.
levels of German in the same class. Okay, sure. Thinking critically and being able to organize their thoughts quickly to write a nice essay, for sure.
Mhm.
I feel like it's hard, especially after the pandemic, learning those skills again, even in
Mhm.
their native language.
Yeah.
Mixed classes again, sure.
I see the mixed classes, and I'm just going to do a quick plug for 2 future webinars that we're going to be hosting. One of them is specifically for mixed level German courses, and then we will also be hosting mixed level courses in general with a little bit of examples from French and Spanish. So definitely take a look at our webinar schedule so you can sign up for them.
All right,
Alrighty.
so shall we move on?
Yes, we shall. Thank you so
Right.
much for sharing.
Yes, thank you.
Before we started to kind of dive deep into our discussion for today, I wanted to take a little bit of time to really address the idea of what differentiation is versus what it is not. And I did want to share that this information is going to be borrowed from our professional development book, Honing Our Craft. And we're going to be using specific information from the chapter written by Deborah Blaz. So we're going to start with what differentiation is. The very first and most important thing is that differentiation is not for some students. It should be for all students. Differentiation should be student-centered, and it should incorporate an element of choice, which we will be talking about with the strategies later today. When we do that, it will automatically increase student confidence, and sometimes it might even nudge them into an area of discomfort so that it will foster their growth. Differentiation is adapting the instruction in order to meet students' different learning needs. And the last thing is differentiation should be a mix of whole class, small group, and also independent learning. On the flip side, let's take a quick look at what differentiation is not. It should not be making a separate lesson for every single student. That is going to be quite impossible. So that is not what we are asking and not at all what we're going to be sharing about today. There's also not one specific recipe for differentiation. It's not one method, but rather a way for the teacher to think about their students and their learning. And the last and most important thing is differentiation is not having to change your existing materials entirely.
Now, expanding on what Britt-Marie just discussed, why differentiation matters. Let's look at that. So, like Britt-Marie has just explained, and like we talked, towards the beginning of the presentation, our AP classes have students with all kinds of language backgrounds, native speakers, heritage speakers, and those learning it as a second language. Everyone brings their own experiences with language, culture, and how they learn best. That's why a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't really work. Letting students connect with the material in ways that play to their strengths helps everyone move forward. So we're going to expand on a little bit more from honing our craft and looking at Debbie Blase's essay, as she argues that there are a few main principles that guide differentiation. The first is going to be comprehensibility. And this can be achieved by building from previously learned material, using graphic organizers, increasing comprehensibility. The second is interaction, which can be achieved by implementing partner small group work, student-teacher communication. The third, critical thinking and study skills, which involve asking questions designed to produce detailed, in-depth responses. The fourth, relevance, which means teachers need to make sure they're connecting students' experiences and perspectives to the content being learned. And finally, being proactive, meaning that teachers need to discover students' learning preference and previous knowledge and interest as best as possible.
Our next section is going to talk about some common challenges in the AP classroom. I know some of you are sharing those challenges in our chat, but let's discuss a few very specific challenges that I faced, that Laura faced, and that other AP teachers across the country are also facing. The very first one is the one that we're talking about today. It's those diverse learners. So we are going to have students that have varying skills, and the teachers have to find different ways to both challenge the students that are at an advanced level while also supporting the students that require extra help. We just talked about it in the chat, but time constraints are also going to come into play and present themselves as a big challenge, because we know that all of the AP world languages are very content heavy, and that us as teachers find ourselves trying to fight against the clock to really find those opportunities to create differentiation. There's also the conflict of balancing the exam preparation and the deep learning. I know very well that a student that does not know the free response sections of the exam, that does not understand the format of the exam, is not going to be set up for success. But if we focus too much time on exam prep, then we're also stuck on that idea of students just doing superficial learning. And then on the flip side, we might spend too much time on deep learning and maybe not preparing them enough for the exam prep. The next challenge is that balance of the standards and also differentiations. We know that there are students that need more support, and those students might fall behind. And those students that are excelling and that need the challenge might become frustrated if we're only focusing on those students that need the extra help. That goes right along with a varying pacing, because we as teachers, or you as teachers, really need to figure out what is the appropriate speed that you can take with specific lessons or concepts to match the needs of those different students. And the last one is resources and materials. There's a lack of access to materials that are already differentiated. And so what ends up happening is that the teachers who already don't have enough time are having to create their own materials. I know that that's not an exclusive list of challenges. Is there any other specific challenge that you can think of right now and are willing to share with us in the chat. And good afternoon for the people who have just joined us. Any other challenges that you can think of that we can add to this list?
Maria earlier did mention about the grammar level not being that high. And that's, I feel, very applicable to this as well.
Yeah, I agree.
All
All right,
listening
so we have
comprehension.
grammar, subjuntivo, subjunctive, very well, thank you. Oh, knowing how to grade appropriately according to AP, moving to a more holistic approach, I agree.
Right.
Analysis, when they work in pairs or groups. All right.
Great ones.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So now for strategies. We hope that we're going to go through several of these strategies that we have found success in our own classrooms, but then also we're going to showcase some different strategies from our different AP and AP prep books for both Spanish and French. We're going to showcase examples from Generación AP, which will be out this coming summer, which is specifically for Spanish AP. We're also going to be showcasing some examples from Reporteros 4, which is a pre-AP book, as well as Reporters Francophones 4, another pre-AP book, which will be out this coming summer as well. We hope that you'll come away with some different ideas that you can use in your classroom, hopefully tomorrow, earliest as possible. But that's kind of the whole idea, is that we want to give you some tools to make your lives a little bit easier on a day-to-day. So the first we're going to be looking at is game-based learning. And I know this kind of sounds immature in a way because it's an AP class, but I think games have a really powerful way to promote active engagement in a fun, low pressure setting, even in an AP course. As world language teachers, we have a unique opportunity to bring in more hands-on activities compared to other subjects. Incorporating games not only makes learning more enjoyable, but it also helps all students actively participate and practice, reinforce both language and AP specific skills in an interactive way. A couple of examples from my own experience that I love to use. The first would be Would You Rather? I loved using this with a conditional. It's a great way to change it up versus just rote memorization of conjugations. No student likes that. And I also love to use this for brainstorming a new theme, a new topic. And then I also loved doing for vocabulary, a speaking activity where one partner's back was to the screen and the second person described displayed image in the target language for their partner to guess. They would only have 15 to 20 seconds to talk in the target language, but it was a quick, fun, energized activity that didn't require a lot of preparation, but got students moving, got them laughing, but then still practicing some really appropriate skills. And here's some other examples, just some food for thought. The first is called Musical Cards for Pronoun Review. And this particular one comes from Generación AP. Again, it's our new AP Spanish book. And in this particular activity, you can write a word or phrase on one side of an index card and its corresponding pronoun on the other side. While music plays, students pass the cards around, and when the music stops, they pair up and challenge each other to correctly replace the word with the appropriate pronoun. Another great activity is the quiz trade. This is an example specifically from Reporters Francophones 4. And students write a challenging vocabulary-based question on a card, then quiz a partner. After each exchange, they trade cards and continue quizzing new classmates, promoting repeated practice and peer interaction. And then the last example for game-based learning is Two Truths and a Lie. And this particular example is from Reporteros 4. And using sentence starters tied to a unit theme, for example, students write 2 true statements and 1 false one. In small groups, they read their sentences aloud while others guess which is the lie. It's fun. It's a great way to practice speaking, listening, writing, or review of a particular topic. So hopefully some of those will spark some ideas that you can throw into your class this week.
Awesome. All right, we also have a great strategy, which is small group activities. And the idea behind small group activities is that by doing that, our students can practice collaboration. That is a real world 21st century skill, they're going to be in a small group. So that facilitates their learning between peers. There will be increased student engagement. And finally, it's a way for building confidence. We're talking about exam prep. So in this particular example, we are working with an email. This example is from our Reporteros 4 textbook. And as you can see, students are coming into contact with an email. And as we know from being AP World Language teachers, students are going to have to read that email, identify very specific information, and then write a response. So we have to put ourselves in the position of the students and really think about all of the steps that they need to take in order to find success at the time of writing that email. So take this activity and put it into a small group activity for almost like a pre-reading so that they can then craft their email. The particular instruction that I have here is coming right out of our annotated teachers edition, but it's something that we could easily do tomorrow in the classroom when we're going to have students practice writing emails. Essentially, you're going to give students the email and put them into small groups. And in those small groups, you're going to have them identify the who, what, when, where, and why of the email. We know that those are the 5 most important things that they need to figure out before they can sit down to craft the email. Once the small groups have figured out the who, what, when, where, why, they're going to trade that paper with another group, and they're going to give feedback to each other. So at the end of this trading, every single group is going to have the right answer to the who, the what, the when, the where, and the why. And they're able to then move forward with starting to craft that email response. So we took something that's really daunting, like an AP email, and we're chunking it down into small pieces and allowing students to find that crucial information in a small group setting.
Thank you, Britt. All right, our next is going to be scaffolding, something I'm sure you were familiar with, but we thought it was important to include because of how significant scaffolding can come into play in even an AP classroom. Scaffolding really supports all learners by breaking complex material into manageable steps. It allows students to build language skills gradually through guided practice, but it also fosters confidence and encourages critical thinking as they engage with authentic, meaningful cultural content. Go ahead and click for me, Britt. Thank you so much. Here are just some quick examples, and this is not an extensive list, but some ideas of scaffolding include pre-teaching vocabulary and key concepts, cultural contextualization, guided practice, peer collaboration, graphic organizers and visual supports, and task-based learning. Again, this is not an extensive list. There's quite a few. In this particular example, this is from Reporters Francophones 4. Students have to interpret an article about a secondhand clothing market in Senegal. Interpreting is difficult for all students, regardless of the language.
Yes.
And so I think this is really a nice way to start off here because we need to give them that support to help them be successful in their native language, in a new language. So here for this particular example, actually go back one. Sorry. Thank you. No, you're good. Thank you. You can give students just a small list of vocabulary. It doesn't have to be in English. It can be in the target language, but it's a small support that students can use to enhance their comprehension of the text. They can still use contextual clues. You can still use other differentiation strategies, but it's just a nice support in there to help students with new vocabulary so they can still get the meaning. You got the next one. Thank you. To go even further, here's some just additional scaffolding activities that can be used with readings. And these all these activities actually come paired with the article I showed on the previous slide. And the difficulty level for students here gradually increases, but support is given along the way to all students. So the first is going to be observing and describing a photo that accompanies an article. On the previous slide, we had an article that had a small photo. Easy as enough just to have students look at the photo and make an inference about what the article is going to be about, a little pre-reading strategy. The next is, again, making that inference, but now about the title and introduction. What could the article be about? Are there any new words, cognates? What meaning can they gather? The next pre-reading strategy here with scaffolding is diving deeper into the new vocabulary, asking students to scan an article to find specific words you've previously identified. Students have to then determine their meaning of each one using background knowledge, cognates, context, etc. Now they get to read the article. They've done those great pre-reading strategies, vocabulary, making some inferences, and then they get to read the text. And all of those pre-reading strategies too, those can be done solo, those can be done with a partner, just a lot of different ways that you can group students for that extra support. So after they've read the text, they can do an association activity where they're matching a particular person, place, or an item with a description, for example. And then on top of that, after, if they've done all of those activities solo, you could then give them a partner or have them pick their partner, whatever you're most comfortable with, whatever's going to work best for your class makeup. And then you could end with bringing partners in interpretation together. They have to fill in a table, a graph, discuss a new question. And then to go even further, you can put them into groups. Maybe they did a jigsaw. Maybe students wrote or read particular parts of the article. Maybe they have to answer a set of questions. There's a lot of great ways to get students comfortable and confident with the article, then break it down, make it a little bit harder. But all students are then able to embrace the article regardless of their level and still really get the good content and, grammar and vocabulary that they need to learn.
Our next strategy is probably one of my favorite strategies that I did while I was teaching, and that is creating choice boards for students. I am taking the cultural comparison worksheets from our Reporter series. This particular example is from Reporteros 4 from the first unit. And as you can see, this particular worksheet starts with a writing prompt, and students are given 3 questions that they need to pick and then write about. The reason why I like choice boards, and the way we're going to turn this into a choice board is on the next slide, but the reason why I like choice boards is they're going to promote student voice and preference. You are given them, as the title says, choices to pick from, so they can gravitate toward those things that they feel interested in or are passionate about. It also gives them ownership of learning. In this particular example, the only choice that they have is writing. So I'm going to tweak it to give students an opportunity to make more decisions. And last but not least, giving them choice boards is also going to address different learning styles, because you're going to give them choices to approach the entire set of questions. So as you can see, we have 3 questions, and it's giving students the option of doing presentational writing. So I'm going to take these 3 questions and turn them into a set of choices from the very beginning. So the very first thing they were doing originally in the worksheet, so I'm going to keep it. I want my students to pick one of the 3 topics, either the importance of textile industry for Peru's economy, how do athletes and artists use their attire to claim their culture in Bolivia, or how do the most important tourist locations in Peru confront massive growth? So we have 3 options. They're going to pick one of them, so they can choose whatever topic or country they are most excited or interested in. The second choice is, in order to successfully do a presentational writing or a presentational speaking, students need to organize their ideas. So I want my students to get used to working with different types of organizers. I want them to pick any kind of graphic organizer that speaks to them, to organize their ideas about that topic that they have chosen. And on the third step, I'm stepping away from just having them do a written presentational or a presentational writing sample, and I'm going to give them the choice. For this, you can either do presentational writing or presentational speaking. So I took 3 cultural comparisons, all tied to the general topic that we're discussing, and given students 3 levels of choice for them to show me their presentational writing/speaking skills. I loved creating choice boards.
Our next strategy is going to be differentiated speaking and writing tasks. And this doesn't mean that you have to give every student a different writing prompt or a different speaking prompt. The idea is to kind of change it up each time, to kind of tailor it to see what students are able to do. So, giving students different speaking and writing tasks based on their skill level really helps everyone stay engaged and grow at their own pace. And so, I'm going to give you one example here. This example is from Reporter Francophone CAPFA, and students are practicing an email, as you can see. To differentiate and provide an alternative way for students to practice or even an alternative way to assess students, students can work in pairs, for example. Partners are given roles to play. For example, one partner plays the role of the person writing the email, and one partner plays the recipient. Students can then do a mock interview. Maybe they perform live for the class as an assessment, or maybe they simply do it as a practice with a partner as a speaking activity. Students could even work together to brainstorm questions based on the information in the email and draft a response. So you can really take, a pre-made email and then really flip it on its head, break it down, make it into a speaking or writing task, depending on what the activity is. There's a lot of different ways you can extend each of those AP tasks to see how your students can really excel.
The next differentiation strategy is making sure that you are utilizing varied media to talk or to expose students to the same topic or the same idea that they are studying. Because when we are including varied media, that can address different needs for different students and give them different ways of learning. It will also support language acquisition. It will build cultural awareness. Students get to see language in context and in real life scenarios. And it can also really help them with the critical thinking skills. In this particular example, we have an article from Reporters Francophones CAP. But if you notice, this particular topic is all about education in Senegal. It's an article, but I have also circled the fact that this article is also available as an audio. So right there, you have two types of media available for 2 for 1. The other idea is showing your student a video. So this also talks about education in Senegal, but now we have a video. And finally, infographics. We know that those are going to show up repeatedly on the AP exams. So it's a really good way of getting students to understand and work with graphs while also getting that cultural content.
Our next strategy is going to be peer and self-assessment. Why? Peer and self-assessments combined with differentiation really is truly going to help every student feel supported and empowered. It's important not just to offer a mix of learning opportunities, but to also provide multiple ways to reflect. When students check their own progress or give feedback to classmates, they become more aware of how they're growing and how they can improve. They can really learn a lot from each other. And I know it can be tricky, especially with your class makeup, but it's really an empowering way for students to learn and grow. Together, these strategies create a more encouraging, inclusive classroom where students feel confident, motivated, and ready to grow. Here's an example from Reporteros 4, and you can see in the rubric itself is very holistic. It's not asking students to nitpick grammar or vocabulary. Students instead are reflecting on delivery. When it comes to the AP exam, as we know, this is a very important skill for students to hone for a presentational task. Peer and self-reflection helps builds that student confidence, not only and also allows for constructive feedback, but also another point of view that you as a teacher may not have thought of.
I love those peer and self-assessments.
You too.
Our next differentiation strategy are jigsaw readings. And the reasoning behind a jigsaw reading is it is a way to assign specific reading sections to students based on their comprehension level so that they can tackle a reading, but maybe not as a whole, just a little portion of it. And that gives them that confidence that they need and might also push them into that growth mindset. It's also a way of creating increased accountability within a class. And it also is a great way of offering peer support, as Laura mentioned in our previous strategy. This is one example from our Generación AP textbook coming out this summer. And here we have a short reading about Federico Garcia Lorca, a very famous poet in the Spanish-speaking world. Oh, yes, I love Jigsaw. I love that, Carlos. So we have this reading. You might have a group of students who just look at this and shut down. So take the reading and chunk it down. Those instructions are coming right out of the annotated teacher's edition, but this is something that I did all of the time, and that it's a very easy thing that you could do tomorrow. You can take the reading and divide it into sections. You could even use the numbers that are already assigned in the reading itself if you have readings that are divided by lines, or you could take multiple sections and divide them at your convenience. Have students work in small groups and assign them one section of the reading and have them become experts on their section. Let them work on it, take notes, do a graphic organizer, manipulative of some sort, use dry erase boards to kind of organize their ideas so that they can communicate what is happening in their section to somebody in another group. Once their time dissecting that section of the reading is up, you're going to create new groups, and those groups are going to have a member from each of the different sections of the reading. And then they're going to explain what happened in their section of the readings to everybody else. So at the end of this peer discussion, everybody's going to be an expert on every single section, and it really promotes that idea where we can all come together and understand something that at the very beginning seemed super daunting. At the end of it, as a class, we have been able to dissect it together, and we can know what the main ideas and the most important points are. I use Jigsaw readings all of the time in my AP class, and it was something that my students really treasured, and it really helped them. The next activity or differentiation strategy are leveled activities. We're going to be using examples from Reporteros 4. And in case you did not know, our reporter series have differentiated worksheets where you can adapt a particular page in the book and bring it up for students who need the challenge, or bring it down for the students who need a little bit more scaffolding. This can be very daunting, but this material has already created that differentiation for teachers so that you don't have to. When we do leveled activities, we give students that tailored mindset. I'm creating something that is specific for you to meet you where you're at. It encourages progression, it supports students' needs, and it also will boost their confidence because they can look at an activity and not feel absolutely terrified to take it on, or they can look at an activity and say, I can absolutely do this. So in this particular example, students are doing a pre-watching of a video about Peruvian cumbia. And these are the exact words that students are going to see in the student textbook. This is going to be able to meet the needs of most of your students. But you might have some students that look at that pre-reading activity and it might be a little bit too much for them. So we have a differentiated activity where we take the pre-reading and turn it into something a little bit more visual. We're also going to give students vocabulary help on the margin. As Laura mentioned earlier, a little bit of vocabulary can go a long way to make students very comfortable with something new. So it now is no longer prompting students to write anything. Now they're going to first match a picture with a statement, and then they're just matching a statement with one of the 3 words on activity B. So I took something that required a lot more writing into something that required less writing and was a little bit more achievable for a student that might be struggling with the concept. On the flip side, if I want to challenge my students, I remove the pictures and I am going to have them write from the get-go. So instead of matching pictures with statements, I want them to answer 3 questions about the pre-watching of the video, and then also answer some specific additional questions. So I'm still giving them the vocabulary tools. I'm still giving them that communicative tool that they need to find success, but I'm removing some of those scaffolds to see how much I can push them. And those 3 pages all belong to the same section of the textbook. You can have different students working on different things, but it all matches to the original idea, which is that video about Peruvian cumbia.
Thank you, Britt. Right. I love that part of the reporter series as well. Definitely one of my
Me too.
favorites. All right, our next strategy is differentiated assessment methods. I love this part because there's so much that you can do to assess students in an AP class. It doesn't just have to be a standard AP exercise. You can really allow students to go above and beyond because there is just so much they can pretty much do at this level versus a French one or a Spanish one. So using a variety of assessment methods gives students the chance to show what they know in a way that works best for them, whether that's their speaking, writing, listening, or creative projects. Options like oral assessments or hands-on tasks can help ease that test anxiety and let students shine in their own way. If your school mandates having, taking the AP test, this is a great way to build that confidence, get students comfortable when they get to that AP exam as well. So this, I truly think like this kind of flexible approach of assessing students in a different way supports that well-rounded language skill building, encourages real-world communication, creativity, as well as critical thinking, which we all really want to strive to have our students do. Obviously, in an AP course environment, though, activities need to be designed to sufficiently prepare students for the AP exam. I think there could be a great balance between teaching how to succeed on the exam while also giving students the opportunity to show how they can use the target language to talk about a specific topic. It doesn't have to be a traditional AP assessment each time. Projects, like I said, are a great way to showcase student knowledge. They can easily be designed to incorporate AP skills, AP prep test prep, and without students feeling like they're doing that dry exam prep, which is so boring over and over again. On the screen, we have an example from the Reporteros 4. And the essential question you'll see at the very top is for the unit, ask students, how do scientific and technological innovations change environmental and health conditions? Instead of a traditional assessment to assess student knowledge of the theme, students are actually tasked with a project for this one. The project here, you'll see on the screen on the right-hand side, the project asks students to create a podcast about the most interesting scientific and technological innovations of the last decade. I love that. It's something very appropriate, very modern, very contemporary, but it's also just something fun and different to really assess what students know about this particular theme. I can actually go to the next slide, Britt. Thank you.
Sure thing.
Thank you. I do want to also touch on the fact that it is important to incorporate that AP test preparation. Again, it's that balance really give the students the opportunity to show their knowledge in a variety of ways. I really love, and Britt Marie touched on it a little bit ago, about how Reporteros, or the reporter series, I should say in general, gives students the opportunity, regardless of their ability, to have all those pre-made activities. And the same kind of goes for all of the assessments. Generación AP is also the same because they're giving students a variety of ways to show what they know about a particular theme, but it gives you choice. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Everything's already done, but still hits that same essential question. So on the screen, we have the same essential question I showed with that project with the podcast. But now we have 3 different ways of assessing students. The first you can see is going to be an email. It answers the same essential question, practices an AP skill, but it's giving you that option, that pre-made assessment already done. Go to the next one. Here we have a simulated conversation, same topic, same essential question, but you're assessing students in a little bit of a different way. So it doesn't have to be the same practice each time. You could do a podcast, you could do an email, you could do a conversation, or even the last example, you can even use the IPA that actually comes along with this particular series. There's a pre-made IPA that you could use, for example, here with the interpretive reading, a skill that they definitely need for the AP exam, but it gives you options. It changes it up. So for each unit, you could do a different assessment. So it's just not rehashing the same thing, but you're still practicing very important skills each time.
Thank you, Laura. And with that, we have come to the end of our differentiation strategy. So we are curious to find out what is one strategy that you can implement from this session to begin or to continue differentiating your instruction in the AP classroom. Some people said that they really liked the jigsaw reading. Some people said that the self-assessment rubrics were great. People seem to really think that the small group activities were also a great idea. Thank you, Diana, sharing about the jigsaws, the self-assessment rubrics.
Yeah.
Sometimes we forget how introspective our own students can be and how much they can actually look at their own work or somebody else's work and really come up with great feedback. The choice
And I
board,
always
excellent.
found, yeah, I always found, especially with the self or even peer assessment, especially at that AP level, they're all in it together. It's a really nice collaborative environment. And so I always really appreciated how encouraging students were of their peers. So just really nice words of, hey, like you're doing a great job on this. Here's, a great strategy. So they can really learn a lot from each other.
And sometimes they're harsher on themselves than we would be, which
Yes.
always just made me laugh. We're like, why did you give yourself a 3 or a 2? I think it's a 4. So it would lead to great discussions between us, which was great. Thank you so much for everybody sharing. It seems like choice boards are also kind of speaking to you the way that they spoke to me. We're going to move on forward to our conclusions and our takeaways from today's time. So we're going to do a quick recap of what we discussed today. The main thing is we understand that differentiation can be daunting, but we cannot forget that it is essential to make sure that all of our students find success in any AP exam. It does not have to be just the AP World Language course. This applies to all AP courses. Effective differentiation can look very different. There is not one size fits all kind of recipe, and it can involve things like scaffolding or giving your students a flexible assessment or doing small group instruction or different types of media. And we shared with you, we have some resources such as Generación AP, Reporteros 4, Reporters Francophones 4, that already have built-in tools for teachers to support diverse learners so that you don't have to feel like you have to recreate the wheel each day. And now we get to open the floor.
Yes. What questions do you have? And if there's anything you'd like us to go back to, please let us know.
Colette asked if the presentation would be sent out, and I'm going to let Sarah answer that question.
Yes. First, I want to say thank you, Laura and Britt Marie, so much for sharing your insights and strategies. That was incredibly valuable. As mentioned, it is time for Q&A. So if you can please continue to send your questions using the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. We can read them aloud and Laura and Britt Marie will jump in with their responses.
Diana is asking, does Generación AP include differentiated strategies after each unit or theme? We have been able to take a look at the advanced review for the annotated teachers edition, and those differentiation strategies are actually embedded in each page of the textbook. Throughout the entire textbook, you're going to have ideas for differentiation, to boost your teaching, to gamify. So all of the things that we talked about today are also part of the annotated teachers edition of Generación AP. Somebody asked if what we would suggest when classes are just 4 to 5 people for small groups. Students are at varying levels and can be uncomfortable sharing or doing some of the activities when the entire class is so small. I had a class of 12 students, and at the very beginning of the year, the number one thing that I did before the school year started, I realized we're at the end of the year, but the very first thing that I did was making sure that I created community, because I knew that it would be such a small group. And I mean, when you're in a class of 12, if you have one student missing or absent, everybody can tell that a whole human is gone. So I think the very first thing is making sure that you create community starting from day one and creating that comfort among students. I still think that in a class of 4 to 5 students, you could split that into a group of 2 and a group of 3, or maybe one student can be working just with you and 2 groups of 2. I think you kind of have to find the sweet spot for that particular class because it's so small. I'm not sure if Laura wants to chime in as well.
No, I completely agree. My AP class, I think one of my largest classes actually had 32 at one point. And so it was hard to create that community initially, and we worked really hard on it. And I had students, one of my last years, where I had students at very opposite ends of ability. And it was amazing by the end of the year to watch how much they supported each other, even those students who were lower, who didn't have that grammar, that vocabulary, that preparation, how they work together really well. You might have to create those pre-made groups. Maybe it comes back to letting them pick, depending, on their class makeup. I think there's a lot of ways though that you can make it work to really have a lot of good benefits though, for everybody.
Maritza asked how we could use a would you rather game to practice the 4 domain skills. Ooh, I want to answer this question. So you can actually turn the questions into the different types of skills and have the students have to respond in the same manner. So you could do the would you rather question and only say it out loud so that students have then to produce something, whether it's written or spoken, and kind of flip it. For the speaking, I would have my students perhaps produce the would you rather question themselves so that then they ask the whole class and then the class can share their answers. For the reading, I was actually on Instagram and I saw a teacher post a set of would you rather questions, and you could just post them and have different grammatical constructions in the questions themselves. You could do subjunctive, you could do conditional, and have students identify the grammatical structure. So they're doing a little bit of reading, a little bit of grammar before they actually answer the questions. And for the writing, you could just do listening, speaking, and reading at the top, and then have students produce their answers in the writing form. I think there are lots of different fun ways that you could take would you rather and kind of, as Laura said, flip it on its head and have it work in different ways to practice different skills and communication modes.
I actually use the would you rather a lot in the beginning of the year, specifically for the community building, funny enough, to get students. I did it in my French ones, I did it all the way up to AP, and it gets students hearing the language right after summer break. But then they are like, oh, wait, like you like this ridiculous TV show too. It's you want to be dared to do XYZ. So there's a lot of different fun ways that you can really use it in the classroom. Grammar, themed, fun, whatever it might be.
Gigi asked in the chat regarding any more tips on activities and games. So I'm just going to answer her question really quickly. One of the things that I used the most in my AP class on a daily basis were dice. Die, if it's plural, it's die, like gambling dice. And I would take the die and have the students do something with whatever number they got. Sometimes they would have to match the number that they got with a question that I had on the board, and it was a cultural comparison. Sometimes I would have them do it for grammar practices. Sometimes I would have them have 2 die, and they would get one die would be for a subject, and the other die would be for a verb, and they would have to quickly conjugate. You can take die and use them to do tons of different activities, and it's something that is low prep and also high engagement for students because they feel like they're gambling. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's really fun and it's kind of noisy. And it was probably one of the things that we used most often for lots of different types of activities.
Great suggestions. And let's see, we did have a question. Does CLET offer games, cards, or board games? There are certain series that do offer games. You'll see in the Reporter series that we've shown a lot of examples from, and Generación AP, ways to gamify your lessons. But there are certain series that we have for both Spanish and French that do have board games, just typically for younger students for these particular series.
Lisi is asking about expanding a little bit on flexible assessment, considering differentiation. Do you want to take that on, Laura?
Sure. So in terms of, I'm just thinking of, I think there's a lot of different ways when you can assess students, and especially at that AP level. I feel like trying to take, using the AP rubric, I think is a great start, but I think there's ways you can adapt for different students. I know, like within Generación AP, for example, they have, different rubrics embedded to help look at, different student ability. I like the idea of that holistic, though, where it really kind of gives you that nice overview picture of how a student is able to communicate. I think feedback in general, I feel like sometimes students don't read. But sometimes I would be wary of using, giving them that full rubric. I would like to write more. But I think there's a lot of ways that you can level it and make it work without having to reinvent the wheel each time. I don't know, Britt Marie, if you have any other ideas right off the top of your head.
I think also it's important to consider the word assessment, that it doesn't always have to be something that ends up in the grade book. You can have your students working on an assessment type activity and split the class and have one student be one-on-one with the teacher while everybody else is doing still an AP related activity, but you're just getting that immediate interaction with the students and you're able to give them feedback. It doesn't go in the grade book, but it's a really good way of seeing what your students can do at that point in time. I used to do that a lot when I was preparing my students for cultural comparisons. I would have them talk to me and do a cultural comparison with me while they were working on preparing their different answers and creating graphic organizers to be ready for doing a cultural comparison. So yeah, I don't think when we talk about flexible assessment, it necessarily has to do something that ends up in the grade book. It can just be something formative to give immediate feedback to students or to have students work on while they're also getting prepared for that AP exam format, which we know is really important.
Thank you both so much. I think we were able to answer all of the questions so far in the webinar. If there are no more questions left, I have a couple of closing announcements for today. First, I want to thank all of you for joining us again. We hope you're leaving with some practical strategies that you can apply right away in your AP classes. I know Laura and Britt Marie gave some examples that you can use tomorrow, which is fantastic. So before you go, don't forget these next steps. Please fill out our feedback form. Your input helps to keep us improving, and it is dropped there in the chat. And if you need a certificate, just complete the certificate request form, and you will receive that within a week. And that link is also in the chat. And then if you would like a free sample, you can explore Generación AP, Reporteros 4, or Reporter Francophone 4 to see how differentiation is built in. You can also fill out the link that is dropped in the chat. And if you'd like to join us, please, for our next webinar, you can check out our upcoming events and register at our website, which is in the chat, cletwl.com/webinars-KWL. On behalf of everyone at Clet World Languages, thank you for the work that you do, and we hope to see you again soon.